It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you too. Thanks for inviting me over.
No worries. So the reason I wanted to have you is that there's some exciting news. You've got an event coming up. Now, is this your first time?
This is my first time doing like an event like this. It's going to be a boot camp where I actually teach everything that I know about short-term rentals and also especially everything that works in the Edmonton market. I've never done anything like that before. I'm Edmonton's Airbnb community leader. So I get constantly messages from other Airbnb hosts, but also I get messages from people who've never done Airbnb before, probably 3 to 5 per week. And they're all like really good questions. They're not a question I can answer in like 5 words. They're something that takes a bit more of an explanation. It's like asking like, how do you do real estate?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the things that really blew my mind as I've learned more about Airbnb from you is it is real estate, but it's not real estate. It's a business layered on top of real estate, and it operates in a completely different way. The rules of thumb for long-term rentals do not apply to Airbnb. What works well for Airbnb may not work well for long-term rentals. It's kind of an interesting one. So what are you doing and when are you doing it?
So it's happening March 8th, 9th, and 10th. We're doing a boot camp.
3 days. Wow.
Friday will be just the evening. We'll be doing from 6 to 8 p.m. Then Saturday and Sunday will be all day from 9 to 5. So we have that set up so that way I can take the time to go in and share all this information with everyone who's been interested to know. We're entering a really nice time in the market where a lot of Airbnb hosts have gone away because of different regulations that were popping up. So now there's a gap in the market for a short time for people who want to come into the market where there's less competition than there is normally.
Now, one of the interesting things is Airbnb, it seems like a restrictive strategy to the ignorant. I thought it was. But as you get more into it, and as I've learned more, it's actually surprising how nimble it is because, you'll say it better than I, but can you quickly pivot from Airbnb to a midterm rental, to a furnished rental, to a long-term? Like, how do you adapt with the market changes? Are you always Airbnb or do you pivot?
Yeah, so the thing with Airbnb is it's like Kijiji. It's just a platform that connects people together. The reality is short-term rentals, if you boil it down, all you're doing is you're offering a house for rent, but that you're furnishing it and you're willing to do contracts as low as 1 night. So for me, the difference between doing a 1 night stay and like a 6-month stay is just who comes in and talks to me. And there's different ways you can appeal to different people by adjusting your rates, adjusting discounts for length of stays. So it's really easy to pivot your strategy. There's also other things people do where they actually will set it up really nice and fancy, and then they'll pivot to go on Peerspace and actually do like photo shoots.
Is it true that you can use Airbnb to cater to different markets like weddings, photography, modeling, obviously long-term or short-term accommodations, sports teams? Like, what niches have you found that are surprising?
Yeah, there's all sorts. I think the biggest thing that you need to think of is like what kind of people book a hotel. All sorts of people. And it's the same thing with short-term rentals because your real competitors aren't other short-term rental hosts, they're hotels. So for me, the biggest surprise in our first year when we had our 8-bedroom house going was in April. We had a bunch of like U15 girls soccer teams coming and booking because they're coming up for tournaments. And for them, it's way more affordable to be able to stay in a place all together than having to have 20 different hotel rooms. So that was something that was really cool to find out and to learn. Another really cool aspect like you're talking about is a platform called Peerspace, where people actually book it for photo shoots.
Interesting.
So if you have a really unique decor theme and you've got like these like random days of the week where you just don't have bookings, you can get somebody coming in paying like $100 an hour just to do photo shoots in your space. So that part was really cool to find out. You get all sorts like that.
I'm going to have to look at using our property for weddings.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you look at Airbnb? Because obviously people are paying more for an Airbnb because it's a shorter period of time, but what's the equation for that? How do you know what kind of a fair price point is? Like, how do you look into that and figure out how you're going to price your properties?
Yeah, I think the first big thing, any realtor will be familiar with this, is look at the comparables. You got to look at the area and see what everyone else is doing. It's not like 2016, back like I started in 2017, and a lot of it was just shot in the dark. Like you're the first 2-bedroom condo in the core of Sherwood Park. There's nobody else around you, and you're just guessing. Nowadays, there's historical data. There's tons of different resources out there where you can really look and you can check your competitors and find out exactly what you can estimate that you can get for the property. Now, Airbnb is a little bit different than long-term rental because there's ways to be able to pull in a higher amount. It's more like a bell curve, really. So with long-term rentals, it's all about supply and demand. there's this many units and this many renters coming, and so they're going to pay this price. And really, you can, maybe get $100 more a month in rent or $100 less, depending on how you decorate the place up. With short-term rentals, it's a bell curve. So that top 90th percentile will always get booked first, and they'll always get booked at the premium rate. Then the above average, then the below average, and then finally the crap bookings. So if you're in busy season and everyone's booked, you're going to think you're doing great. As soon as slow season hits, those not top 90th percentile guys are still pulling in the dough, but the bottom guys are getting absolutely no bookings.
So I heard you at another presentation share the concept of kind of like almost like the economical theory of Airbnb or short-term rentals versus long-term rentals. Something to do with like retail and wholesale. Can you explain that for everyone? Because I loved it.
There's something you have to break up with real estate investing. There's two parts to it. There's the asset and then there's the business. Now the asset, all you're buying essentially is a piece of land. And that's it. You're just getting this little chunk of earth and that's all you get. And you're hoping that it's going to go up in value. Now, typically land will go up in value if more people want it, and that's about it. Now, on the flip side, you've got the business portion, and that's where you make your money. So for like your day-to-day money, and that's selling time. At the end of the day, all real estate, the only thing you can sell on that land other than the minerals on the land itself is the time that people are willing to pay to spend on there. If you have a raw piece of land, you're selling it to a farmer for probably like $2,000 a year. If you throw a house on it, well, now you can sell it a higher premium. You can sell time inside that house for maybe $2,000 a month. You can either sell that time in big chunks for like the year as a long-term rental, or you can sell it in small chunks, essentially retail, as a short-term rental. So you got the wholesale version, which most people are familiar with and most people think about, and then you got the short-term version, which is what Airbnbs are. You're selling at retail. You're getting the highest amount you can for that time per night. As opposed
But
to
it takes more energy to sell in small increments than to just signing your lease. So Carlos, I keep hearing about these 4 factors of success in Airbnb. In 30 seconds, what the hell are they?
In 30 seconds, they are your location, obviously. The second thing is your ability to market your property. With platforms like Airbnb, they do the majority of the marketing for you. But if you're taking pictures with your cell phone and the lighting's terrible, you're not going to do as well as somebody who gets a professional photographer in. The third thing is your amenities. What does your property have? There's other things you can add to your properties to make them stand out from your competition. And the last thing is your ability to host. How good are you in interacting with your guests? How good are you at getting those 5-star reviews? Because once you start getting bad reviews, you're going to get deboosted in the algorithm and eventually you're going to be dropped from the platform.
Amazing. Look forward to learning more about it. So what is it that you think that separates a bad short-term rental from a good short-term rental from an excellent or amazing short-term rental? What's the secret?
I think the biggest secret that separates a bad short-term rental from a great short-term rental is the amount of investment you personally put into the property. If you're, getting the cheapest furniture you can from IKEA, outfitting your property with the bare minimum, doing like nothing to deal with your guests or hiring a bad property management company to take care of it just because they're cheap, you're going to end up getting not as much money. Your property's going to get worse and worse. You're going to be catering to like a worse and worse clientele. On the flip side, though, if you invest, a little bit more money into property to make it really pop out, you do a little bit more research and you keep up to date with all the updates on the platform. So that way you're always on the cutting edge and you do make it so that way your guests have an amazing experience. You're going to be able to stand out. You don't even have to be in the best location to be able to stand out doing this.
Do you think a great operator with a property in a bad location can thrive? And do you think a poor operator with a great property can thrive? Like, which do you think is more important, the operator or the property and location?
Honestly, I think the operator is the most important. At the end of the day, you are the main factor that can turn this ugly duckling into something that is even average or above average or great, or you can turn that ugly duckling or a beautiful property into a really crappy location, really crappy property. And that kind of investment of time just comes down to you taking the time to learn what the difference is between the two.
Look forward to learning more about it. I heard you the other day presenting, and I saw that you mentioned there's 3 types of Airbnb operators. Do you want to go through what they are and the different quick strengths and weaknesses of each?
Yeah, so there's 3 main types. You have the traditional owner-operator. So you bought the house, you own it, and you're the host. That's kind of like the normal way that most people do it. So, and to be honest, about 70% of Airbnb hosts are just that. They only have one property. The second one is one that's been really popular on the internet for a long time, and it's definitely a strategy to be able to get into short-term rentals with low or virtually no money down, and that's called rental arbitrage. That's where I go to a landlord, I rent the property from them, and then I furnish it, and then I put it on Airbnb. So it's called arbitrage because I'm taking a product at one price and then I'm reselling it at another price. So that's a really good strategy. It allows you to scale up really quickly. That's one of the big pros about it is you're able to get a large portfolio fast. One of the cons though is you have no underlying asset. So you're completely reliant on cash flow.
It's strictly a business rather than an asset.
Yeah. However, some people have become very wealthy using this strategy. It's a great way to kind of get into the market, to test the market at low risk, because at the end of the day, if you don't like it, when your lease expires, you just leave. And then the last strategy is called co-hosting. And it's both, that one's literally a no money down business because in the Airbnb world, co-hosting is what we call property management. You go up to somebody who either has a property and you can tell they don't want to deal with it anymore, or they're looking for a great return on their property going into short-term rentals, but they don't have time to manage it themselves. You say, hey, I'll manage the property for you. I'm going to get it on Airbnb. You'll pay for the furniture, but I'll deal with absolutely everything else. You never have to think about it. From there, we take 15 to 35% as a co-hosting fee, and then the client gets the rest. So,
awesome. One of the three strategies that you can implement Airbnb with is co-hosting. Now, is co-hosting a form of property management where you need to be licensed, or can you be unlicensed in the co-hosting space?
So in Alberta, RECA, the Real Estate Council of Alberta, wants absolutely nothing to do with short-term rental property management. So you are not required to be a realtor right now, and also it's essentially an unregulated market. So it's definitely an area for opportunity. It's not a new industry. If you go to, for example, Camrose, there's tons of them there. There's probably like 20 to choose from. It's an old market there. In places like Edmonton, there's only a handful of operators. So there's definitely a gap in the market if you want to open up your own short-term rental property management and become a professional co-host.
That's awesome. So with your short-term rental business, what was the single system or process that you put in place that made the biggest difference?
The biggest system to automate was cleaning. And when you first start out, typically when you have one property, you're doing the cleaning yourself. It's nice because you get to keep all the cleaning fees, so your profit margin is really good. But however, one of the challenges comes is that once you hit like 2 or 3 properties, well, now you've got like a semi-full-time job or a part-time job there on top of whatever full-time job you already have. So it becomes very difficult to keep up with that. So then you're going to turn and find outside help. Now, with only 3 properties, you're typically looking at a third-party cleaning company. Some of them are really good, some of them are not so good, some of them are really expensive, some of them are really cheap. And that's one of the challenges that most Airbnb hosts face. What I typically recommend to people is if you're going to expand up, jump and get to 5 properties as quick as possible, because then you have enough turnover, enough cleaning to be able to hire a full-time employee. Once you have that full-time employee, you're able to train them the way you want. You're able to teach them exactly what to do. And you're able to have a lot more control on how that cleaning process goes. Because one of the biggest things that'll destroy your guest experience is a messy property. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants hair in the sink.
Nobody wants hair in the sink. And as well, when you hire out a third-party company, typically you're paying, for example, in a 1-bedroom suite, if I have to hire out a third-party company, I'm paying anywhere from $50 to $90 for that cleaning. If I'm hiring somebody in-house and I'm paying them, $21 an hour, $25 an hour, my costs are now between $21 and $50. So it cuts that cost in half, which increases my profit margin dramatically.
That's awesome. When you're doing your market analysis on a short-term rental, what do you look for to identify hot markets or areas where there's less competition? Like, what are you looking for?
The biggest thing I look for is I look to see where there's gaps in the market. So, for example, in downtown Edmonton, there's types of property where they're a dime a dozen. 1 or 2 bedroom condos are absolutely everywhere. Anything 3 bedroom and above right in the downtown core virtually doesn't exist. There's like 1 or 2. So if I were to come into the downtown core in Edmonton, I'd be looking to get either a 3 bedroom condo or maybe find a house that's not too far away. On the flip side, I also might look and for example, I'll look at the Northwest and see that there's virtually no Airbnbs there. And then I'll look and say, hey, is this a case where there's just not a lot of competition? Or is this a case where there's not a lot of profit? So then I'll zoom in on the individual listings and I'll look at them and see what their calendars look like, see how many reviews they've gotten, see how long they've been there. And so that's a really simple way to be able to figure out if a market has a gap in it or if a market is probably one you might want to look twice at.
Now, when you're analyzing a market, how much of your analysis should be on your competitors as Airbnb, and how much should you focus on the hotel industry and what's in the area?
That's a really important thing. Honestly, hotels are our main competitors in short-term rentals. You're looking to see where the hotels are clustered. The other thing, though, is wherever the hotels are clustered, there's going to be traffic coming to that area. So hotels are both a competitor where you might want to say, I don't know if I can compete with this one, but they're also an indicator saying, hey, I should look in this area and see if there's a gap in the market where I can come in and outperform them.
Do you find that you can undercut hotels on pricing, or do you find that the overall cost of the market works out that you're quite comparable pricing wise?
If you're competing on price, you're losing. Price is like the last thing you want to be competitive with, because that means that your product isn't good enough to be able to grab the top dollar, or your clients that you're going to be getting are getting progressively worse and worse and worse.
No, that makes total sense. Thanks for sharing. Look forward to seeing more about it. So what are your thoughts on property analysis? Should someone be doing an in-depth analysis on every property, or do you have a trick to quickly sift through the market as a whole and then increase your analysis as you look to more niche markets? How do you do it?
So a lot of times people come in and they find a property that they think is going to be a good short-term rental, and then they want to analyze it. And honestly, that's a way to do it, but it's also the hard way to do it, because now the only thing you have to go on is your competitors in the nearby area. So what I like to do is I like to come in with the bird's eye view, look at all of the city as a whole, and from there zoom in and zoom in and zoom in until I find those little tiny spots where there's gaps in the market where I can be super competitive in. I also take the time to look at where my competitors are, which are mostly hotels, but I also take the time to check out and where the amenities are, and also where upcoming things are. Like, where is the city putting in money for infrastructure, for new cultural centers, for new sports arenas? Where is that money going? And then from there, I'm able to zoom in even more to figure out exactly what neighborhood I want to buy in, exactly what kind of property I want to buy, and exactly what kind of investment I'm looking to put into that property to be able to be that top performer.
For short-term rental, what kind of margin do you look for to be sustainable over your reoccurring monthly expenses?
So short-term rentals obviously aren't long-term rentals. We have busy seasons and slow seasons. I mean, if you go to Florida, for example, the swings are $1,000 a night down to $50 a night when it's slow season. Edmonton's not like that. Edmonton's a lot more narrow. Slow season, like my one bedrooms will pull in like $2,500 a month, and then during busy season they'll be pulling in like 4,000. So because of that, I'm able to go in and look and say, hey, for this to be worth it for me, I need to be making at least $500 a month. So I need to be able to find a property where after all my expenses, I'm still profiting 500. So that's the first thing I look at, and I want to do that per bedroom. So if I have a 2-bedroom, I want to be profiting 1,000. If I have a 4-bedroom, I want to be profiting 2,000. So that way, when I have those market swings, I have a very good buffer.
Awesome. So for someone who's got a property and they're looking to get into Airbnb, do you have any rough rules of thumb for how much cost they should account for kind of linens, cleaning products, furniture? Is there anything that someone can use to, when they'll say they look at a 3-bedroom townhouse, to just estimate how much they need to take it from a long-term unfurnished rental to a competitive Airbnb property?
So typically, I look at the number of bedrooms in the property, and then I take the number of bedrooms and I times that number by about 7,000. It used to be 5,000, but then COVID and inflation happened, so now it's 7,000. So if I have a 1-bedroom apartment, I'm expecting it to cost about $7,000.
So this isn't just the cost of the bedrooms. You use the bedrooms to reflect the size of the house, how many kitchens there may be, bathrooms, living rooms. So that's going to kind of overall work out the cost for you.
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome.
Now, and of course, there's like ways to save money. Like obviously, when you're starting out, you can, be a Facebook Marketplace warrior and go to the thrift stores and try to find deals, or even make the furniture yourself. It's actually really easy if you're doing like a rustic style to make furniture, because then if there's any defects, it's a feature instead of a problem. On the flip side, though, I've also done higher end Airbnbs. Like for example, I did a steampunk one, custom made all the furniture pieces, put in $10,000 into a studio apartment. Now, just because I spent that much didn't mean I made a good ROI on it, but there's ways you can spend more money to stand out, and there's ways you can spend less money and save money and still be able to stand out.
So what do you think is one of the biggest mistakes people make when they're getting into Airbnb, and is it avoidable?
I see probably the two biggest mistakes I see are people buying like $1 million houses, and then throwing out an Airbnb thinking they're going to pull like $20,000 a month in January. So I've seen a few people who do that, and that's probably like the most catastrophic one because there's no recourse with that one. And then the other problem I see is people who they take one of the units that they have, they take their ugly unit, they put the cheap IKEA furniture in there. Like IKEA's got some nice pieces, but there's also the lack table. So because of that, they end up losing money because they're not doing things to be competitive.
So would you say that is there a way that cheap furniture can be done well and competitively, or is cheap furniture just fail every time?
I think it's more important to, like, people get hung up on the cost of furniture, but really they need to really focus more on their decor style. So there's ways, for example, like I was saying, you could do a rustic decor style, and you can be very cheap. You can go get lumber from Home Depot, slap together, like find a YouTube video that teaches you how to make a coffee table in 20 minutes, probably like $30, and it's cheap, and it looks good, and it's going to last a while. So there's ways to, if you pick a decor style like rustic, where you can get away with stuff like that. One thing I've done is I've done a crystal Airbnb, and I've made a lot of the dining table and like the wall art myself. Because I'm making it myself, it makes it way more affordable. So just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's bad. However, if you're going and grabbing the cheapest,
So cheap and lazy is the issue.
cheap and lazy, there you go.
So on the 8th, 9th, and 10th, is this going to be an event on Airbnb where it's just going to be you talking the whole time? Are you going to have other professionals? Is there going to be hands-on activities or workshops? Like, what can someone expect when they go to this?
So at this event, I know that two kinds of people are going to be coming to the event. You either have a property you're already thinking of throwing on Airbnb, or you're looking to expand your portfolio to include Airbnbs. So at this event, my intention is to be able to have you come, be able to figure out if you already have a property, if it's worth doing as a short-term rental, or if you're looking to expand your portfolio, find out exactly where you want to go, so that way you can turn around and go to one of the realtors and be able to start looking for that property right away. Because of that, I've got both myself talking about what I look for in a short-term rental and things I do to make them stand out, but I've also got other people, like, for example, Chris Mike, who's going to be coming and talking about how to find off-market deals. He's probably the best guy I've ever seen in all of Canada at finding those deals. I've got you coming as well to explain how to be able to finance those deals, because that's a big part of the puzzle that most people miss. And then I've got people like Jenny Lee, who will be coming in. She is a fantastic interior designer, has her own TV show, and she's going to be coming in to talk about interior design hacks that you can do as a short-term rental.
Awesome. I look forward to seeing you again.